The engines hum across the grey skies of Busan. On the tarmac of Gimhae International Airport, the plane carrying Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, touches down. Its silver fuselage glints under the coastal sun, a moment both ceremonial and symbolic. For Japan, this is not just another diplomatic arrival. It marks a new era in its political leadership and regional posture. Takaichi's landing in South Korea comes ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, an event where regional economies seek stability amid escalating global competition, supply chain disruptions, and shifting alliances. The symbolism of her arrival in Busan, rather than Seoul, is not lost on observers. Busan is where diplomacy often blends with quiet signalling, close to the sea lanes that link Japan and South Korea, and not far from the strategic choke points that shape East Asia's security map. As the plane taxis along the runway, cameras flash through the terminal windows. Journalists capture every angle, knowing this footage will dominate Japan's evening broadcasts. Takaichi, the first female leader of Japan in modern times, carries both political weight and symbolic resonance. A protege of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and a conservative within the Liberal Democratic Party, she inherits a complex agenda, reviving Japan's economic growth, reinforcing its security posture, and redefining its role in a multipolar Indo-Pacific. The door of the aircraft opens. A gust of wind whips across the tarmac as the new Prime Minister appears, dressed in a muted grey suit, calm, precise, deliberate. She steps down the aircraft stairs, flanked by aides and protocol officers. There's a quiet dignity in her composure, the kind that reflects both discipline and resolve. Her arrival is accompanied by a carefully choreographed welcome, orchestrated by South Korean officials who know that every gesture here carries diplomatic meaning. This visit is not merely ceremonial. It follows months of renewed engagement between Seoul and Tokyo, two allies of the United States who, after years of strained ties over wartime labor disputes and territorial claims, are rediscovering shared strategic ground. The rapprochement gained momentum under former leaders Kishida Fumio and Yoon Suk-yeol, and now continues under Takaichi, whose hardline reputation contrasts with her pragmatic approach to foreign policy. As she greets the welcoming delegation, South Korean officials, Japanese embassy representatives, and security personnel, the tone is cordial but purposeful. Each handshake is deliberate, each smile brief. Behind the flashbulbs lies a deeper story. Both Japan and South Korea are navigating one of the most volatile geopolitical environments in decades. With tensions in the Taiwan Strait, North Korea's accelerating missile tests, and US-China rivalry escalating across trade and technology, both nations are under pressure to coordinate more closely than ever. Takaichi's convoy soon departs the airport. The black sedans glide through Busan's coastal highways, escorted by police motorcycles and lined by onlookers waving both South Korean and Japanese flags. The symbolism of unity, however fragile, is unmistakable. Alongside the APEC agenda of economic resilience and digital cooperation, her trip signals Tokyo's intent to cement its presence as a central pillar of regional leadership. For Japan, the stakes are high. Domestically, Takaichi faces economic stagnation, inflation concerns, and an aging population that has slowed productivity. Internationally, she steps into a world transformed by shifting power balances. Her predecessor's free and open Indo-Pacific vision remains alive, but she seeks to translate it into tangible partnerships, particularly in technology supply chains, semiconductors, and clean energy infrastructure. The APEC Summit in nearby Gyeongju provides the perfect stage for these ambitions. Global leaders, including US President Donald Trump, China's President Xi Jinping, and South Korea's Yoon Suk-yeol, are expected to attend. For Takaichi, this is her first major international test, an opportunity to assert Japan's leadership while navigating the sensitive rivalries that define the Asia-Pacific. Observers in Tokyo note that her policy style is assertive, rooted in national security realism. She has long advocated strengthening Japan's self-defense forces, revising constitutional limitations on collective defense, and boosting defense spending to counter regional threats. Yet her approach to diplomacy leans toward calculated engagement, balancing deterrence with outreach, especially towards Seoul and Washington. In Busan, that duality is on display. As she exits her vehicle and waves briefly to the press, she appears composed but alert. Her smile is faint, her gestures measured. She knows that every image broadcast tonight will be dissected, both by allies and critics at home. Throughout her career, Takaichi has cultivated the image of a determined reformer, someone unafraid of controversy. Her rise to the premiership followed an intense leadership race within the ruling LDP, fueled by both generational change and Japan's shifting geopolitical priorities. Her supporters call her the Iron Lady of Japan, drawing parallels to Margaret Thatcher's blend of conservatism and resolve. Her critics, however, see her as a nationalist hardliner whose instincts could unsettle Japan's fragile diplomacy with its neighbours. Yet, in moments like these, the arrival, the greetings, the procession, she projects something more nuanced. A leader aware of her historic position and determined to define it on her own terms. At the heart of this visit lies a delicate mission to maintain Japan's economic resilience amid growing US-China competition while ensuring that the trilateral alliance with South Korea and the United States remains operational and credible. The recent trilateral defense talks in Honolulu, the missile defense cooperation agreements, and shared supply chain initiatives all point to a convergence of strategic interests. But maintaining public support for this cooperation, especially in Japan and South Korea, remains a challenge. The people-to-people ties between both nations are improving, but historical wounds persist. Yet leaders like Takaichi and Yoon recognize that pragmatism must prevail. Both economies rely on open trade routes, stable investment climates, and technology exchange. Both face similar demographic pressures and energy security dilemmas. And both understand that in an era of great power rivalry, cooperation is not a choice, it's a necessity. As the motorcade approaches Busan's coastal district, the skyline glitters with summit banners and APEC flags. The theme this year, shared growth in a fragmented world, reflects precisely the tension that defines today's global economy. For Japan, this means promoting resilient supply chains and advancing digital and green transitions. For South Korea, it's about leveraging its innovation edge while diversifying trade dependencies. Together, the two nations are positioned to shape a new chapter in regional integration. Inside the summit venue, final preparations are underway. Security teams coordinate movements, media crews test their equipment, and delegates finalize their briefing papers. Takaichi's speech, scheduled for the second day of the summit, is expected to emphasize strategic stability through economic cooperation. Insiders suggest that she will call for greater collaboration on critical minerals, semiconductor supply chains, and AI-driven manufacturing partnerships across the Pacific. Her aides indicate that she also intends to reaffirm Japan's commitment to humanitarian assistance, climate goals, and maintaining freedom of navigation in the South and East China Seas, a subtle but clear reference to Beijing's recent assertiveness. In diplomatic circles, her Busan trip is already being described as a tone-setting moment. While her policy positions remained firmly conservative, she has shown willingness to engage Seoul on future-oriented cooperation rather than historical grievances. Analysts believe this could mark the beginning of a more confident, forward-looking Japan, one that acknowledges its past but refuses to be bound by it. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the markets react with cautious optimism. The yen steadies as investors interpret her visit as a signal of continuity and stability. Major corporations, especially in the semiconductor and energy sectors, view her APEC agenda as a chance to deepen regional industrial linkages. For South Korea, the optics are equally important. Hosting Takaichi in Busan, away from the capital, projects an image of openness and regional inclusivity. It also reinforces Busan's bid to position itself as a global diplomatic hub, a vision championed by the Yoon administration. As night descends over the port city, the lights of Busan's harbour flicker against the dark water. The aircraft that brought Takaichi now rests quietly at the far end of the tarmac, a silent witness to a day dense with symbolism. The APEC Summit will soon bring together leaders from across the Pacific Rim, but this first arrival already sets the tone. Renewed engagement, cautious optimism, and a shared understanding that the challenges ahead demand collective resolve. For Sanae Takaichi, this is more than her debut on the world stage. It is the beginning of her test as a leader, one measured not by ceremony, but by how she navigates Japan through the turbulent waters of the 21st century Pacific. The convoy disappears into the city lights, engines fading into the hum of Busan's traffic. The world watches, waiting to see what Japan's new leader will bring, not just to the APEC Summit, but to the evolving story of Asia's future.